There we go. I've got a lot of rubbish written down here, but it's a waste of time. So we'll not bother with much of it. On this day in 1952, the first British atomic weapons test, called Hurricane, was successfully conducted aboard the frigate HMS Plymouth. And in 2023, Republican Kevin McCarthy was voted out as Speaker of the US House of Representatives. The first time in history a Speaker was removed from office. Well, we're not going to remove our Speaker tonight. Next month, on Friday the 7th of November, 7 p.m. here, the subject will be the history of the Red Cross. I hope. For this month, on Friday the 10th of October at the library, we're holding a History Day featuring the 90th anniversary of Ysgol y Castell. And also, the 2027 calendars are on sale here tonight and at other places until Christmas and beyond at the unchanged price for the last 5 years of £6. Now, we should have had the police here this evening, but they obviously got a call to go elsewhere. But at very short notice, I am pleased to welcome Michael Blackburn. We all know Michael, he's been here many times before, and he's also coming back again in sometime in the future. I can't remember when, but it's either in your programme or in next year's programme. Tonight he's going to talk about the developers and the development of the Chester to Holyhead Railway. And what he told me to impress upon you was there's not many pictures of trains. So Michael,
there is some.
Over to you.
Okay, nice to see you all again. I have got this talk on a memory stick, but I couldn't find it, so I brought the slides instead. Right, there's a nice train on the screen for you.
You want the lights off?
Yeah, better do, yes. Please.
That's better.
There we are. Like that. I like this picture because that's me taking a picture there through the window. This is the Royal Family Victorian coach carriage in the York Museum. And dear lady, who's that? Come on. Victoria. And why have I put that there? Well, it's quite simple, because although there are various thoughts about the date is not quite correct, obviously she became the Queen of the British Empire around about 1934-35. She was very young. But the important thing is, when she became Queen, we were just about to hit what is probably the greatest change this country ever had. Many of you, if you're into railways, will know what I'm about to say. The railway mania, which was mainly financed by rich entrepreneurs, business people, landowners in Britain. We suddenly realised that with a railway going to your community, you could travel distances at a far quicker rate. And I like to quote this one thing. I love quoting letters. There was a Mr. Humphrey in Manchester. The year was 1831, and he wrote a letter to the new governors of the Liverpool-Manchester Railway. It had been operating for just over 12 months. So the railway between Liverpool and Manchester ran for a distance of exactly 31 miles. And Mr. Humphrey wrote a letter to the management and said, "I've just got to praise you, because this has never been possible before." He said, "I have businesses in Manchester and shipping companies in Liverpool help me with the trade of my goods. I can now get on a train at Liverpool Road Station in Manchester, in the Deansgate area, at 10 o'clock in the morning. I can travel to Liverpool, to the Edge Hill Station." The line hadn't been extended into the centre then. And he said, in a handsome cab, I could get to my trading partners and have a lunchtime meal by 12 o'clock. We'd do business, we'd sign a few contracts, I'd give them the ideas of how the railway was going to help to move our goods quickly into Liverpool, and I was back in Manchester by 5 o'clock in the evening. His statement said, "I don't think anybody on the planet has ever been able to do that before that railway arrived." So that's the start, that's the start of a major change during this lady's reign, right through the 1800s into the early 1900s. I think it was 1901, something like that, when she passed away. That is probably the biggest change to our country. By the time we got to, quote a figure, 1921, there were over 23,000 miles of railways covering the country. That's quite a thing when you think you travel around it. Your own branch line have all been closed back in the 50s and 60s. So the car is king now, isn't it? It's taken over. But I think this lady is quite a powerful image of that change that happened. By the year 1900, we had the largest trading merchant shipping fleet on the planet. The estimate is it was nearly 6,000 vessels by 1900, running from 70 major ports around our country. You know them, I'm sure you can name many, Liverpool obviously, and those ships were going to every location on the planet. Islands in the Pacific, rivers in India, far as Australia, all around Africa, all of the northwest areas. So during this lady's reign, our position on the planet changed. And I know I've said this before in talks, and of course we gave the world a lot. I'm a patriot. We're hearing that a lot at the moment after that killing yesterday and that sort of thing. But I'm a great believer in what we've given the world. Time clock, time stages around the planet, 24 hours. That was developed from Greenwich. Many people don't realise this, because train times needed to be accurate. So they made sure they worked out Greenwich Mean Time to fit in with train travel, as well as world shipping. And of course, as we look at it today, you only have to turn on the radio or the television or whatever device you use to keep up to date, and you hear cricket results and football results and rugby results and tennis results and golf results. We've given the world that. And they're all beating us at it. But look what we've given them. So let's go through some pictures. So the Chester and Holyhead Railway was given an Act of Parliament in 1837 to be surveyed and worked out the best route possible. And just before we hit it, we must remember this man. He wasn't a top engineer, he was a tinkerer with mechanics. He started his tinkering in beam engines in Cornwall, and in 1801, that's his road locomotive there. It drove up the hill in Campbell in 1801. They reckon it travelled at a speed of about 5.5 miles an hour. It went uphill to the top of the town because it didn't have any brakes. They used the hill to slow it down. And that great moment, recorded in local newspapers there, celebrates the start of what we now call our mechanised life with transportation. A few had developed beam engines before then, so Mr. Trevithick, he created the first railway. Can I say this to you? I've said it when I've been here before. To me, it's the greatest event that's affected the world. His steam railway engine at Penydarren, Merthyr Tydfil, in February 1804, pulled the first train on the planet in Wales. Nowhere else. So Trevithick's very important. And this man's very important as well. Now, if you haven't seen it, if you go to Chester Station now, there's a new statue just being put in place to Thomas Brassey, who was one of the great designers of railways in our area. He worked with Thomas Telford on the A5 construction from Shrewsbury to Holyhead. He learned his techniques there. Many of these people came out of the woodwork, if you like, and learned from other people. This is George Stephenson. and we've just had the anniversary on the 27th of September, Saturday, which was the first public railway on the planet that had an Act of Parliament to allow it to carry passengers and freight between the towns of Shildon, Darlington and Stockton-on-Tees. He had a great manor house in Chesterfield when he finished his days, and he finished his days in that area, and he's buried in that area of Chesterfield. But this is really what we call, Trevelyan's the engineer to start railways and engines, but George Stephenson, they call the father of railways, which have now gone all over the planet. He, with his son Robert, was given the contract to survey the railway from Crewe to Chester, and then Chester along the coast to Holyhead. It took them 3.5 years to sort the route out, and they didn't really start construction until 1845. There were problems. They took on with them 2 architects, Francis Thompson, designing bridges and stations, and William Fairbairn, that every one of you in your kitchen and your car use his designs every day. He invented the box girder, which we're going to see on this story. And we all know this, that's the state it's in now, but there's Stephenson's rocket. At the moment, it's up in Newcastle. It used to be in the Science Museum in London, but they feel that's where it was constructed. I always think this about our country. We always suddenly lock on to something that's important after it's been destroyed. The factory where the Stephensons built all their engines and girder bridges and other bits of mechanics on the banks of the Tyne, just below Newcastle Station, has just been demolished. Well, that's a key point. It's a bit like, I compare it to other things, the old fathers of Liverpool decided the Beatles created drug addicts on the planet, so they destroyed the original cavern. But we've got a history of this all over the country in different places. We focus on the railways. So there's Stephenson's, the 2 Stephensons. Father and son's steam engine, the rocket, on the Liverpool-Manchester. Right. There's a start of our journey. So there's Francis Thompson. Get used to this name. Francis Thompson designed all the stations from Euston to Birmingham to Rugby, up to Crewe, and then out to Chester. That's one of the largest stations he's designed. And at that period of time, what was popular was everything Egyptian. So you start to see in the shapes of buildings and bridges that thought. Everybody thought wonderful. Pyramids and great temples and statues and Cleopatra needles and all that. That was a big fashion at this period of time in our history across the country. Obvious map, and you're on there. Rhuddlan's on there, you can see it. So there's the final growth of the rail system in North Wales. Let me just throw some obvious things that started it, led to its growth. From just to Chirk and Oswestry in this area, right up through the area of Wrexham, Gresford, all the way up to the Point of Ayr, was the large North Wales coalfield. By 1902, just follow my hand, through that area to there were 104 coal mines. And most of that coal was going to Liverpool to power ships. As the railway developed from Chester, much of this coal was carried on branch lines that were branching off the Chester line. So from Saltney, coming down to Gresford and Wrexham, Great Western Line, then the Mould Line coming into that area. Coed Talon in the hills was called the Crewe of the coal mining area, and one other big product happened. There's 4 coal mines and a little area called Painswood and Copper, and that's where they discovered cannel oil. Cannel comes from a Scottish term of candle oil. If you laid that coal like a bit of a sticky mess on a grid, an iron grid, wherever you lit it, it had one blue flame, and it dripped into the tray underneath. The oil industry on the planet started in Flintshire in 1821, and by 1844 it was a big industry. that oil was going everywhere, and it was used for all sorts of industrial usages until in 1849 crude oil was discovered in Russia. That name we don't like talking about at the moment, and suddenly that became a big change on the planet. So the railway wasn't just built to go to Holyhead to link with the ferries. It also linked much of the industry on this route. So there's your Vale of Clwyd line coming all the way down to Corwin, the Mold line coming through to Denby, the branch line to Dizzard because of the quarry there. That was going to be extended to Holyhead, but they decided it wasn't worth the money or the effort. Branches at other locations, and another line developed up to the growth of Birkenhead, coming down into Queensferry, crossing the Chester and Holyhead, and then coming down to Wrexham as well. That growth of railways, wherever you look in Britain, if you see a growth like that, it's because of industry and raw material. Most people couldn't afford to travel on the passenger trains in the early days, and many of the stations were paid for by rich people. So Chester, and this is, I think it's a 1901 Ordnance Survey map, and of course by then we've got the massive station, and this is something very important. You may, if you're a railway enthusiast, you may not have heard of this before. The busiest station in the country with the amount of different railway companies was Carlisle. That station had 11 different railway companies running into it. Chester had 8. It had the London North Western, or what started as the Grand Junction. It had the Cheshire Lines Committee. It had the Wirral Railway. It had the Great Western coming from the south. It had the Chester and Holyhead Railway. It had the line that went out to Shotton, which was Cheshire Lines Committee. And eventually, the station couldn't grow anymore, so the Cheshire Lines Committee built their own station at Northgate. It's all gone now. That is the growth of madness. That map is 1901. And look how it takes up a large chunk of the city area. It doesn't matter where you look in the country, you've got that growth with those railways. There it is today. I'm on the road bridge just looking into the city station. It used to have 9 bay platforms, 4 through platforms. Most of the bay platforms have been filled in now, made into car parks. But can you imagine, you could come on a train from London to Chester via the Great Western Railway from Paddington, and you could come on a train from Euston through Birmingham or Rugby into Chester, and the Great Western train would be facing from this end of the station, and the London North Western would be coming from the other. And they both come from London. That's the craziness of competitive action with landowners and rich people with the railways. There's the station as it looked. I've just zoomed in to show it all. And of course, when you have a station of this size, you need a lot of mechanical maintenance as well. So just off the picture up in the top right corner there was the Great Western engine shed. Just off the picture to the lower, left up there, down to the right there was the London North Western Railway engine shed. And then the Cheshire Lines Committee had their own engine shed up that end by the Northgate station. And there's the figure we want to see. So there we are. 85 miles to Holyhead. I can't show you everything on the route, we'd be here for a week. Alright, but I've put the main important features on the route. And just to show you once again, because this is important, whenever you have a railway growth, you need a community for the railway workers. So whichever town or city you see large stations, engine sheds, very often those communities are still there. Much of the railway is gone, only the main tracks are there. People are living in these. It's like down Stephen Road in Chester, there's a mass of terraced houses. That was for all the people who worked in the canal docks off the River Dee. Well, the canal docks are gone, but the cottages are still there. That is a railway construction area. You have to look after the workers. And you'll see that everywhere. If you go to Crewe, you go to Manchester, those places still exist. Yes, Richard, not many trains, but I thought I should show you this. I think when you set off from Chester, you've got a very attractive route. The city of Chester, its geology is mostly sandstone. And there's 2 tunnels as you come from the station, under the town area, under the city area, sorry. You come into this area here, there's 4 tracks. The train you're looking at is actually on the Great Western tracks. The 2 in the foreground are the London North Western, which became the L&S, and later days 2 have been done away with. But the competition between these companies was fully up there. There's another view looking the other way. So the 2 tracks on the left are the Great Western Main Line, going to Saltney, to Wrexham, to Shrewsbury, all the way down to Snow Hill in Birmingham, or down the borders of Wales to Leominster, Hereford, Abergavenny, all the way down to Newport and Cardiff, and obviously the other line is just going to Holyhead and serving the branches in North Wales. And our first disaster in the history of railways that's affected every single railway on the planet. This is the Rhuddlan Bridge. It's not the original. An accident happened here. The bridges were originally designed with cast iron and wrought iron. The mixture of strength was advanced as they built. They kept looking for better quality material and stronger structures. Well, the bridge, when it was opened originally, around 1844, it was okay to carry the trains of weight at that time. But before long, the trains were getting heavier. They ended up putting more caissons. If you don't understand engineering, this is a caisson here. So it's iron in the early days and later steel. It's piled in. They dig deep into the riverbed. They use like a vacuum jar method. So men go down there, they dig it out, it's taken away with barges. They built a stone base and built these tubes on top. Now in recent years, they filled the tubes with concrete to make them even stronger. And there was always a rule of mathematics to do with kinetics, how long a span of bridge you could make. But they made a mistake that they didn't realise. As the trains were increasing and the weight of rail track, the track itself became heavier, they needed more ballast on the bridge. And it was round about the 1870s, a train was crossing the bridge collapsed, quite a number of people died, including the engine crew. The train ended up in the river. Border Trade Inquiry at the time, which took 12 months, they actually said, nowhere in Britain should anything be constructed of materials that can't take increased weight. That Board of Trade document went round the world as railways were being built, and it actually laid out the details of construction of bridges, the spans, the weight they could carry, and if the trains were going to get heavier and heavier, you needed to really consider, could that bridge hold the weight in the future? So that report on that became very important, not just in Britain, but everywhere. And of course, one of the things here that's very important, and I wonder what would happen today. We're so obsessed now with conservation and protection. Look, the railway has been constructed through the town walls, through there and out here. I wonder nowadays if that would be allowed. You know, we've become so strict on history and everything else. And of course, this is where the water tower was just above where the old canal harbour used to be. That area where there's tennis courts and other things now. There's a major change. I hope you agree with me what a fantastic city Chester is. For history, ladies, for shops, the roads and everything else. It's got fantastic history in it, and if you are able to walk, the 2.5 miles around the town walls is fantastic. And there's guided walks. Every August for 4 years I was a Centurion soldier leading groups around the walls. That was fun. You had to dress up and you had a Latin card to learn words. But there's the railway leaving Chester. As we leave Chester, you head out towards Saltney. There's not many of these, okay? So. If anybody's into the locomotive, it's a Dutchess Pacific. It's during the late LMS and early BR days. There's the 4 tracks coming out of Chester. So this is actually an LMS train on the Great Western side. And then we come to Saltney, and of course Saltney is the dividing point. And of course there's a wonderful history here, but it's been swallowed up. You know, I don't need to point this out. Everything you see on this side, there's the River Dee. The River Dee here is man-made. It was given Act of Parliament in 1732 to be canalised. So the area we know as sea land used to flood at high tides. Once they canalised the river, that didn't happen anymore. Saltney became a trading point with industries. There was iron foundries, everything here. But look, all of this is full of houses now. Everything you see there, that's changed. I don't know what the date is. I can't see the date. That's 1900. I was just saying to one of your colleagues earlier, every community in the country since the 1950s has been swamped by housing estates everywhere, even your community here. And as we leave, I can't show you everywhere because I want to show some important structures. As we leave Saltney and we head along the banks of the River Dee, you also see a number of other little lines, some of them narrow gauge, coming in to meet the development. And here's the railway that comes through Connors Quay, Shotton, High Level, the Birkenhead Junction, Demarsh, going up to Birkenhead. Remember, as these were being constructed, every location was growing like mad. Birkenhead became a big shipbuilding area, Camel Airs and other companies. River Mersey was tidal, the River Dee silting up. There's a whole history. You can't have a history of a railway in isolation without the industry that grew with it. And Birkenhead, and it's the first place in Britain that had trams in the streets. The American man with the name tram as his surname came to Birkenhead first. Where does this all come from in my head? I don't know. So, and here's another example. So, okay, I'll get it as clear as possible. All I'm trying to show you is what railways have done. You know, before roads fully developed. So here's the North Wales coast, the Chester Holyhead Railway coming through here, past Queen's Ferry lower station and the upper station on the Bidston to Shotton line, to Wrexham line. As we go along, all of this development grew. It was growing before the railway came, but all the industries that are there, Mancott, that whole area had 5 coal mines. Suddenly you've got a railway. Horses and carts to get the railway to the station, load up the coal wagons, There's the growth. This is integrated life with transport. And I've got to say this now, you'll agree with me. Life has never been, since then, what it was before. It's gone. Transportation has changed life completely. I heard 2 people the other day talking on the radio. They were world technology experts. And they said this hit that Marks and Spencer's has had and Land Rover had is just the tip of the iceberg. These people could actually knock out whole electric systems, water systems, and put demands in that they want payment to switch it back on. You think what's happened to our lifestyle over 300 years, and now we're relying on all this electronics. I sound political, don't I? Really. Come along a bit further, and here's Connors Quay. Connors Quay developed, why? Because of Buckley Mountain. Buckley Mountain is where all the yellow and cream chimney pots were made, where the bricks were made, the roofing tiles were made. They had their own harbour down by the river, but suddenly the railways arrived, Chester and Holyhead, sidings into it, other sidings here, filtering out, mixing into the main line, sidings, marshalling areas, and suddenly the Buckley bricks, the Buckley chimney pots are going everywhere. Walk down the main high street in Glasgow, don't look in the shops, look up above. There's Buckley chimney pots on the top of every building roof. Go down the centre of Manchester, you'll see Rhuddlan chimney pots, Buckley chimney pots. Look what's happened. The railway has made everything possible. In a day, you can move the material to another part of the country. And it was the first time as well in history that a railway wagon became like an advertising poster. On it would be written, Davis and Sons Coal Mine Chirk. And those wagons would be sitting in sidings all over the country. So now we've got another thing. We were all used to advertising, but the railways introduced it. Flint, those two big tower blocks there, and of course this first section from roughly Mancop through to Flint and just onto Connors Quay was only double track, all from the beginning, never quadrupled. Once we get beyond Connors Quay to Mostyn, the railway had to be widened to 4 tracks in the 1970s. Why? Because many people took their annual holidays in Rhyl and Prestatyn and Colwyn Bay, and in the summer months the amount of passenger trains were used. Blackpool, to this day, is the largest seaside resort in the whole of Europe. Its current population is 336,000 people. There's no other resort in Europe as big as that. Those people went there when they retired. They did it during the years on the train for a week's holiday. Now, I'll put this one up, sorry. So I mentioned these here, but of course we've got these other lines coming off the Chester and Holyhead. Most were built later, but the Chester and Holyhead has had a major effect on reaching out to all the other communities and other businesses along the North Wales coast. And I thought I'd better slip this one in. Obviously I can't show everywhere, there's not enough time. 1911. This is the first miniature railway linked to a fairground going around the lake, the Marine Lake in Rhyl. And they're 15-inch gauge engines, there were 5 of them. And William Barnes, he had them all named after his children. So there's Michael and there's Joan, and they're still running, and the railway's still there. The fairground's gone. Shooting past everywhere, I can't show everywhere, it's impossible. You'd be here 4 o'clock in the morning. And my voice would have gone. As we come along the coast from Abergele, Pensarn, passing Rhyl and places like that, we come to another section where the railway is just double tracked. It's still doubled now. And it comes through past the old quarries at Lisfine and Llandullas, into Penmine Roast, which is the higher area of Old Colwyn. The A55 now, folks, goes along the shore around this headland and then comes under the railway in. When they built the A55, this was a massive council estate. 185 houses had to be demolished in Old Colwyn to make way for the A55 dual carriageway. Because it runs parallel, once it goes under the railway, it runs parallel with the railway right up to Colwyn Bay Station. My head's full of all this stuff. I think I've been on the planet too long. Next one. And you come to Colwyn Bay Station, and there's all little bits like this to do with the railway. So they decided the easiest route to run the railway with as little engineering as possible was right along the shore. They built the railway on an embankment, which was made up of gravel, stone, and material off the beaches as well. Because they never thought, Colwyn Bay didn't exist until the railway arrived. Old Colwyn was there. So Colwyn Bay grew with the railway arrival. The big pit here, which was the goods yard, and this is where the Colwyn Centre is now with supermarkets, that's where they dug all the material out of to make the embankment. That's how railways worked, where they made a cutting at one point, they moved the material along to build the next embankment. If they needed stone, a lot of the stone along the railway came from the tunnels in Chester. There's red sandstone bridges along the North Wales coastline. So you use your material as the railway develops. And there's an aerial shot, and we're looking along that whole, and I've put it in on purpose, okay? So we're looking at West End, Colwyn Bay. There's the Colwyn Bay Pier, which is mostly gone now. Here's the Colwyn Bay Growth. There's Old Colwyn, going on to Llandullas, on to Abergele, across to Rhyl. When the railway arrived, the census of 1821 in Rhyl had 21 people living there. By 1861, it had grown to 6,000 because of the railway and hotels and holidays and piers and everything else. Colwyn Bay, when the railway arrived, all of this area was just fields. There was none of this here at all. The main road wasn't there. The main road, the old highway, goes above Holyhead Bay across here. Railways change things, as we're seeing around the world everywhere. The growth of railways in Asia, in South America and everywhere is changing the landscape. And there's our example, we led the way. And another aerial shot looking the other way now. I know I'm missing lots of bits out. I've had quite a few flying lessons in past years. Here's a train. The sun's shining off the roof of it. This is mock train. We're going down the valley towards the River Conwy. And the A55 dual carriageway is now built on part of the railway. This section from Conwy Bay to Llandudno Junction by the 1870s was 4 tracks, because there were so many trains coming along. And when you get into Llandudno Junction, that's the biggest shock of all. Before the railway arrived, there was no Llandudno Junction. It didn't exist. Good picture. There's Llandudno Junction once the railways arrived. If you don't believe me, if you have a trip over there, have a look. Every white space you see up there, or the link road from the Black Cat roundabout goes up here, around this area and over. All of that is full of housing estates. And of course the old Hot Point factory used to be over here as well. That's all gone. There used to be one at Rhuddlan. But the original station, when the railway arrived, was here by the Ferry Hotel. But they found the station couldn't cope with the trains. So they built a new one. They built an engine shed, a carriage shed, and then the start of the Conwy Valley line, around about 1854, started to grow south. And in 1855, the branch line along the shore, past the Ganley Towing to Llandudno was constructed. What did the railway do? These were fishing communities. Once the railway was built, they were cut off from the sea. They could no longer bring their boats up onto the beach on the high tide. Similarly, off the picture at Glen Conwy, that was a fishing village, with ships also going through to Liverpool around the coast. As soon as the railway was built, Glen Conwy was cut off from the trade going by boats. So the railways make this big change. And there's more up-to-date one, Richard. I think it's Britannia actually, in Llandudno Junction Station. And of course, as you get these branch lines, you've then got more trains coming in. And you have to change engines, and you need more carriages or less carriages. The 2 bay platforms here, even to this day, is where the Llandudno trains go. I can't believe it. I go to Llandudno quite often. And when you drive along the Ganley Road, the trains are running to Llandudno every 20 minutes. There can't be that many passengers. I find it amazing. And of course, the platform over here is no longer there. This is all overgrown with trees now. It's contracted. But it's still a busy station, and you can still get a mainline train from there all the way to Euston daily. And there's the growth coming. Look, the growth is starting to appear. Notice there wasn't anything above the railway before. There's the station. Look, we've now got houses. And there was 2 brickworks. Here's one of them, and there was another one further over. Worst bricks ever produced in North Wales. They spoiled terribly. They couldn't cope with frost. Poor clay. And there's the branch to Llandudno. That's the Ganley station. When that was built, there was nothing there. The hotels, the Ganley Castle Hotel and others, there was nothing there. That's all come because of the railway. That's what transport does to a community. Hop across the river and we come to this familiar scene. You all know it, I'm sure. This is William Fairburn's bridge. He designed the iron tubes. We're wrought iron now. They actually slightly taper up to the middle, so you've got suspended strength there. If it was level, you put a heavy train on it, it would sag. So it slightly rises, but they found by the 1870s the spread was too long, so they sunk caissons into the riverbed and filled them with early concrete, so to shorten the spread. The towers, to complement Conwy Castle, were designed by Francis Thompson, and as far as I know, these are the biggest drain pipes in Britain. These side towers are drain pipes to drain flat roof off the top of the towers either end of the bridge. In between or behind it is Telford's Bridge, 1826 suspension bridge. That is actually the only Telford suspension bridge which is in its original state. The Menno Bridge, most of the ironwork's gone, it was replaced with steel, and of course the other one, Craigalackie up north, and other ones around the country have all had to be changed with new materials. But the one here, controlled, managed by the National Trust, under a World Heritage Site of the castle, is still a Telford Bridge in its original condition, hidden away between the railway tube and the modern 1958 bridge on the other side. Great place to go walks, and there's some good lay-bys there where you don't have to pay in the car. And there's a view of it a little clearer, I think. You can see the river. And of course, I don't know if you realise this, when Telford built his embankment, Cobb, out to that point to put his suspension bridge across, he changed the tidal channel. The tidal channel is to the other side of the river, on the east side. It's now on this side where Conway Town is. And we come to Conway Town, the railway still passes through, the station closed for quite a period of time, 1960s to 70s, but it's reopened now. And we've got a strange one here. I had to do a land registry case on a house here years ago when I was working for the Ordnance Survey, and the house is on that bridge. Now on this map it's not visible. And I was inside the house taking measurements, and suddenly, and the whole floor shook. I'll show you why. I said, what do you do? He said, we're usually in the kitchen, we know the timetable, because when you're in the lounge, the floor's too big. There's the two houses above the tunnel. But you do feel the train underneath the floor. Because, look, that line of stones there, that's the level line of the road, the other side of the parapet wall. So the ground floor obviously is on that sort of level. Great experience, going to a house which is rattled by a train. We come out of there, and now the railway is going on an adventure, and this is why the Stevensons took a bit longer doing their survey. So as we leave Conway Town, we go along the shore. This is Conway Morver, and we come to a very hard tunnel to blast. The rock here is a mixture, it's diorite, there's no limestone on this side of the river, but there's a soft layer of granite shale in the mountain. So when they started blasting for the tunnel, large areas either side, not above, started to collapse. So they had to do a lot of stonework. If you go through the tunnel on a train and you look through the window, you can see walls like this one over this side, okay? They've actually had to do that to hold the rock face either side within the tunnel. Route diagram, just to show you where we are. We're almost at the halfway point. I always think, I'm big into engineering, I love wild landscape as well, and I always think from Chester to Conway, the railway is not as interesting as the next section. Now, it's got great views. I was trying to think, another railway in the country, main line, not branch lines, that keeps so close to the sea for a long way. Because certainly from Flint, you look out the train windows, I know there's trees there, but you can see the tidal estuary, Prestatyn, all the way along Abergele. At Llandillas you get quite high, so you can look across at the 175 wind turbines that are out there in the bay. And then obviously when you come here, even going to Llandudno, you go along the Conwy estuary shore, and now we come to this bit, which is probably the most complicated piece of engineering at that time. We're talking between 1845 and 48, anywhere on a railway in the country, the whole country. First, where the line goes along the shore, it suffers badly even to this day with high spring and autumn tides. So as you come out of the Conway Tunnel, under the Pennine Bark crags, there's two layers of strong stone walls, and there's a platform, it's covered in sand now, which actually holds the reinforcement. So you have a plinth platform which is built out both sides, deep, and then you build an angular stone up to the limestone blocks there, so that's that shape, and behind it you have an almost vertical wall. When it gets to the top section, there's a cavity between the two. This one takes the waves, the inner one has supports running into it to hold it in place. Now, I'm not exaggerating. If you're into storm weather, this is a great place to go. You can walk through that arch, but I wouldn't do it because the tide ploughs through there. There used to be 2 railway workers' cottages there. They've gone now because very often it will flood through. What they've done today is they've made concrete slopes at the other side. There's 2 of these inspection tunnels, so the sea can't get up the concrete slope. I've seen from the other side the waves hitting this and lifting higher than the railway back into the sea again. And that is being pounded, usually with strong northerly winds, because the coastline faces north. That wall has been pounded for years. It has had lots of repairs. The next section becomes even more dramatic. So here we are. I thought you'd like aerial shots because it's easier to see what we're talking about, isn't it? So there's Llandudno out there. When people sit on the pier at Bangor, they can see all the wind turbines out there now, and it looks like they're in the middle of Llandudno. So they've got a joke on the pier at Bangor. Why are they putting all those wind turbines on Llandudno? Do they think it's going to lift it up when it gets flooded completely? You should hear the conversation from the pier, because that's what it looks like. Llandudno is under major threat. Both promenades have been raised 2¼ metres. The town now behind the promenades is lower than those promenades. And all the services, people forget this, the services for the town, fresh water, sewerage, electric, gas, are lower than the high tides. And Llandudno is built on sand and clay. Anybody here live there? I will say no more. We come into Pembermouth Station, and of course Pembermouth Station grew on the back of the Derbyshire family. That's D-A-R-B-Y, Derbyshire, and they developed the Pembermouth Quarry. From the 1830s onwards, it's the hardest granite in the whole of Europe. It's what they consider is grade 62. It's used for coastal defence work, the ballast under the railway track, road development, strong gravel type tarmac on the roads with different colours. Now when you come to a roundabout, you've got coloured tarmac. My friend who was the manager for many years, I used to walk the mountains with, he said, Mike, if we laid that tarmac from Pembermouth all the way to Glasgow, you'd use up a set of tyres every day. Because it rips the rubber to pieces, but it stops you skidding. That's why they're putting it on roundabouts everywhere. That tarmac is made in Pembermouth. Here, because the yard is very busy, it's got its own signal box. At the moment, 3 to 4 times a week, 2,000-ton trains are taking ballast from here to the Northern Powerhouse development at Huddersfield, Hull, York and Staley Bridge. And they were also taking stone down to HS2. They're the most powerful engines in the country, and the trains are frightening when you see them going uphill at Colwyn Bay. They were almost screaming, towing the loads. So the signal box is there to control the yard. You can see there's the station. It's an old photograph. And I always love this. Now, there used to be narrow gauge railways off the quarry coming down to the shore to jetties. This was the one from the Bundrick quarry next to the Derbyshires. So that had a narrow gauge railway over it. And here's the A55 as a roof that's been built above it with the mainline railway underneath. How about that for a museum building? There's no tramway there anymore. And I've put this one in to give you an idea of what we're looking at. This is where I live. I live over the other side. I live down a mountain over there, down in the valley. But there's Pembermouth Mountain. It doesn't look like that now. The hole in the top is 300 feet deep. Stone is being extracted every day, and loaded trains come into the sidings between 2 and 4 times a week, taking stone away. Years ago, there used to be jetties coming out here, 4 of them, and they load ships up as well. So there's inclines. You can see the old inclines where it came down. That's all now being finished, and its ecology being blasted with seeds. So that's covered in trees and plant growth there. But this is getting deeper, and we've just heard on the 1st of April this year that the Welsh Assembly has agreed that the quarry, because of its contracts, can now start blasting over the next 10 years 96 million tonnes of rock on this side. We've got contracts everywhere. It's a German company managing it, Heidelberg. The railway is at the bottom here. It comes round the base into an avalanche shelter, then a tunnel, then another avalanche shelter, and then on a viaduct over the sea. It's very impressive. And at low tide, you can see there low tide, if you choose your time right, you can walk right around the base of it between Pembermere and Cambrebecken. There's a famous picture from years ago, and it's showing the construction of the railway, all the perspectives wrong and the size and everything. So here's the railway viaduct with one of Stephenson's trains, and here's Telford's Road up here. But the size and everything's wrong. This is now a cycleway, the old road. Years ago, I've heard people say that when they came on a bus from Llandudno to Bangor, they could get a choice when they got to the top of the headland here. The driver would say, anybody want to get out and walk the next bit? Because you're high up and it looked frightening from a bus coming along this road, looking down. So there's an artistic impression, but let's look like what it really looks like. So there's the avalanche shelter. I spoke to a railway engineer about 30 years ago about this. I said, so that's got big timber beams in it, coated in bitumen. It's got angular iron bars across the top, lengthways, and then it's got a 2-foot layer of turf and earth on the top. I said to the railway engineer, has it ever been tested? He said, no. If a boulder, say a ton boulder came down here, the idea is it slides down, off there, slips into the sea. That's never happened. But there we are, that's an avalanche shelter above the railway. If you go that way on the train, you'll think you're just in a tunnel. And as we come to the headland part of it, overlooking, can you see the height there of the mountain? At that point, it's 1,550 feet, only just over a quarter of a mile from the sea. So that's a massive climb up. And you've got, first of all, the protection walls built on plinths. Rocks have been put in places by the railway company to break the force of the waves. Then you've got, there's the railway viaduct coming in, then the road viaduct, which you still drive on now if you're travelling east. And then up above, in here, there's a second tunnel. Inside there is the long modern tunnel. And all the fencing is to stop avalanches coming down. And there's sensors in every 10th post to tell whether there's subsidence. That's a long way for rock to fall. Right, switch. We've been on the biggest bit. Anybody fallen asleep? Yeah. Good. We've still got a bit of excitement here. Mainline trains are passing along this section roughly every 45 minutes in each direction. And I don't think many people realise what's above them when they're going through them. There's the 2 viaducts. Now, I've stood with a camera. There's a footpath here on the road viaduct. That's about 70 feet above the sea. I've stood here with the camera and taken photographs down below, and the waves were going over the top of the railway viaduct. So under a real force with the northerly wind, they blast through the archways, hit a bounce-back wall underneath the road viaduct, and then meet the next wave coming as they're coming out the arches. So they explode up, and when it's that bad, they have to close the railway off. If you don't believe me, watch this next picture.
Can you walk along there?
You can walk along the shore,
Yeah.
you can park on the beach at Pembermere,
Yeah.
this end, or Cambrebecken on the promenade. Choose, look at the Liverpool tide table, sorry. You've got about an hour and 20 minutes to get round. But in that middle section by the viaduct, can you see the stones there? There's quite a lot of rock pools. And the sloping masonry stones are covered in moss, seaweed and moss, so they're really slippery. But you can walk around. And the way to do it, quite simple, walk one way along the beach and come back along the top on the cycleway. And there's a footbridge over end to get back to the bridges. So it's a great walk. The sun only hits this between the middle of May and the end of June. That is never lit by sunlight for the rest of the year because the sun's setting further round. And that's on the road bridge looking down. Right, now, I think this is more impressive than the Britannia Bridge. So that's not, I've got one of the best ones. You can see the surge of the wave coming in. As the wave comes in, it hits the plinth below the road viaduct where I'm standing and throws it back at that wall. And it'll hit that wall and splash up over the railway. Some don't come through the arch, they come over the top of the viaduct. That was designed by Robert Stevenson. The first time they built it, the sea smashed it to pieces and they realised they had to make it stronger. But to this day, trains are still crossing it. And there's a better picture. You can see the road now. Yeah? So the road viaduct is about 70 feet high. It's one way going east, so it's dual carriageway, and the west is the new tunnel through the mountain. I've actually seen a steam train coming along here, and a wave going over the steam train. Very impressive. There's a famous story here. This is true. It was reported in a newspaper, but it's sometime way back in the 1950s. A young lad who'd only just learned to drive his car, I think he was in a Ford Anglia or something like that. He was coming along this viaduct, and just before he came on it, there was two girls who he'd seen on his course in Bangor thumbing a lift. So he pulled up to let them in. This is true, this story. They got in the car with their bags. He said, "Just wait a minute, I need to go for a wiggle." He jumped over the wall and killed himself. And that was in the newspaper, very famous at the time. There wasn't the extra railing then, it was just a simple fence there. And it was dark, he didn't realise, 70-foot drop. Boom. And they were sitting there for ages wondering, what's the matter with him? Has he got a problem? Right, as you come through the headland, right, a lot of the walls are like this. I'll put this in to explain to you. So the plinth, the stone plinth is here. It's roughly about 20 foot deep, and it's got a valance on that seaside that goes out under the tide of it. When the tide's out, the railway workers drive Land Rovers along it to do servicing on these walls. And in 4 places along here, there are access points under the wall, so they can come from a road on the other side. But the design is, the wave comes up, hits that, goes maybe halfway up, turns and comes back. And it'll hit the next wave coming in. That is amazing. And this goes for 3 miles like that. Can you imagine building it? Because there's only certain days they can build it, isn't it? When the tide's in and that sort of thing, it would be. But it's still standing. They also had a navvy's base right along that section to build viaducts, build the walls, the safety and everything. And it became known as garrison. And at one point, there were 3,000 navvies based there, working for 3.5 years, building all this structure around the mountain. A policeman is supposed to have filled out a report at that time, and he came to see the manager of the camp and said, "I've been asked by the population of Llanfyddekyn to come and see you. We need to sort this out. I've spoken to the vicar in the church. Since your men have been working here, the population in Llanfyddekyn is escalating." There's another story. Steam train, Llanfyddekyn station was built by the richest engineer that Britain's ever had. Richard Platt, John Platt and Richard Platt, father and son, they had 5 estates in Britain. This was one of them, Rhuddlan and Llanfyddekyn. Llanfyddekyn never had a station when the railway was open. They paid for a station. John Platt was the director of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. He was also the director of the London North Western. They owned massive factories in Manchester, also in Leeds and Macclesfield and other places. They built cotton machinery for cotton mills, and they exported it all over the world. On the day John Platt died in Paris, while he was collecting artworks from Europe with his wife Eleanor, he died of pneumonia. They said his personal fortune, not the business, in 1872 was over £300 million. In 1872. Yeah. He was an MP as well, he was a Labour MP. And the funny thing was, later years, Winston Churchill became the Labour MP for Oldham, where he was Labour MP before. Right, another thing people don't realise. If a steam train is travelling a long way, if you wanted to get from A to B without stopping and filling up with water, an invention came about, troughs, water troughs in the middle of the track. And under the tender would be a scoop that would be lowered, and at the speed of the engine it would force the water up into the tender tank. The first ones were put in at Motra, first ones in the world. In the first year they had them there, the stream that was feeding it dried up. That was the Mostyn family that gave them permission to do it. So here, the Penryn estate, Lord Penryn said, you can use our area because we've got 3 streams that never dry up. So this was the first successful water troughs in the world for steam engines. Now, all over the world, even in countries where they've got steam, there are water troughs everywhere. It means the train doesn't have to stop if it's going a long distance. So there's the famous Aber water troughs. And I'm missing bits out, passing Aber station, going on, we come to the River Ogwen near Penryn Castle. Another little piece of information. Lord Penryn was quite happy for the railway to cross his land. He said, you will build me a station at Talavant, and my man, if I want to, at any time, will flag the train down with a red flag, and you will stop, else I'll bang your trains for crossing my land. After a year, he didn't use it. But he had another thing. They built a viaduct, 20 arches, made of sandstone and bricks, and you could see it from Penryn Castle. So he said, I don't like that. I gave you permission to do it, it's spoiling my view, so he imported 4,000 Douglas fir trees from Canada to hide the viaduct. These people make you sick. They really do, don't they? But that's a wonderful place to go for walks. You can park the car and walk down a path to there. It's the Ogwen River at that point. There's another view of it. 20 sandstone arches. The castle's just out of view through those trees. Money. And then, of course, Lord Penryn had his own dock at the Garth at Bangor, and the branch line came off the main line near Bangor Station. It came down a valley and into the docks to collect slate to take to other parts of the country, but the Penryn Quarry had its own narrow gauge railway that ran up the valley to the Bethesda quarries. This is all Lord Penryn, and let's just get another fact straight. When, in 1952, the Snowdonia National Park was created, Lord Penryn gave a chunk of that land, something in the region of 30,000 acres, to the National Park. He was the one who chose where the boundary of the park was going to go. And then the National Trust were just growing in collecting land. He gave another 150,000 acres to the National Trust. So all the Carnedai mountain range, all the way to Ysbyty Even, over to the Festiniog Moors, even including Blaen and Festiniog, was given by Lord Penryn to the creation of the National Park and the National Trust. Don't you feel like you've wasted your life sometimes with these people? You know, you just... I don't believe a word of it. Quick, Mike, keep going, we're running out of time. Sorry, Richard, another one. Bangor Station. Now, Bangor Station is very unusual. I can't find another station in the country like this. There it is. You can see the hill in the background. I'll put a map up. The whole station is trapped between 2 steep hillsides. So coming from Conway, Clanbeck, and it comes out of a long tunnel. It's up above ground to keep the radiant right, and then it dives in another tunnel to go to the Britannia Bridge. Now, yeah, okay, that's not unusual. But what is unusual is, in that ground, they put a 4-platform station with bay platforms, an engine shed, a goods shed, a carriage cleaning area, a post office centre, and everything you can imagine, crammed between 2 tunnels. Anybody who's a modeller at railways, this must be a gem. It's all there. And the main street to Bangor, the longest main street, high street in the whole of Wales, starts by the station. It's 2.5 miles long. If you drive down it today, most of the shops are closed. It's dying. It's very sad. Bangor, the city of Bangor, the oldest cathedral continually used in the British Isles. Started in 533 AD. So there's the station now. It's all overgrown. There's trading complexes and everything going. And then we come out of Bangor, we come past Menai Bridge. Oh, I must remind everyone, those of you that can go on the internet, go on the Menai Bridge heritage site on the 30th of January. The Menai Bridge, Telford's Bridge, is 200 years old. It's closing for a weekend with mail coaches, horse-drawn mail coaches, going backwards and forwards across it. Wow. You buy a ticket and go on it. It's the first suspension road bridge in the world. There were pedestrian suspension bridges in China and Germany before it, but the Menai Bridge, off the picture, is the oldest road Menai Bridge in the world, 200 years old on the 30th of January. Michael, where does all this junk come from in your head? And there's our lovely old Britannia Bridge before it caught fire. And of course it's an amazing design. Remember what I said at the beginning? Egyptian. Yeah? These are like Egyptian temples. We've got Egyptian lions either end of the bridge. You can't see them now because the road deck has been built above it. Yeah? And what's strange is, when William Fairbairn with Robert Stevenson designed the bridge, they designed it to have 2 large iron arches to support the tubes. And the Admiralty said, you can't do that. We need 100-foot clearance at a high tide for sailing ships to get through. That arch won't work. So they had to come up with a new idea. They shortened, by putting the central tower in, they shortened the length of these. They're slightly shorter than the Conway, because they couldn't put caissons in. And they arched up, steeper. So when you come on the, can you just see it slightly there? When you come on the train through, you actually go uphill to the middle tower, and then you go downhill. That gives it a suspension strength. The tubes were designed by William Fairbairn. This was the first 2 places in the world. Box girders produce strength. You can test this with a piece of paper. If you fold a piece of paper into 4 pieces, put it on 2 books and put something on it, it will support it as long as it's not heavy. That's the design of box girder. Your fridge, your cooker, your microwave, all the things we use today are box girders. A car is a box girder. That's the invention of the strength. Every new ship now is built in sections of box girders and welded together. A lesson learned after Titanic. So if one box girder is perforated or broken, the others will still float. In the days of Titanic, the hull wasn't like that. They put doors in to stop the water flooding through. So that's where the design started. Mr. Coca-Cola, the can follows that principle. As a circular cylindrical thing, it's got more strength than a square, thin tin can. How important is that? It's a British invention, folks. And that's what it looks like today. So you can't see the railway, because there's the arches. Look, they wouldn't allow it during sailing ship days, but now it's got arches. This is the railway deck, and the road deck's above. And there's a lot of talk about making a 3rd crossing. I've seen the estimate. 2.7 billion to build one. That's not going to happen. And there's a view from underneath. And if you walked here, if you cross the bridge and go down a little sidewalk road to the church on the shore, there's a statue here, a big statue to Nelson, right, almost underneath the bridge. That's worth walking down and having a look at. Right, next station. I had to put this one in, didn't I? The long name. Yeah, Standby PG. There's, I think it's 11 stations along the route to Holyhead. Most of them are small. Every station building was designed by Francis Thompson. And I just thought I'd put this one in, a bit of regalia. There we are, there's the name for you. The Church of Mary in the hollow of the White Hazel near the fierce whirlpool, and the Church of Tecilio by the Red Cave. That's not a name, is it? Anyway, that's very nice, isn't it? That's Pringles. Right, I've just got another bit just to show you where we are. We've seen all the dramatic drama of engineering. We've crossed to Standby PG. We come to Gare with the junction for the two lines to Red Wolf Bay and up to Amlock, and Badorgan, Ticrois, Losnaig Valley. All the stations look alike. They're all designed by Francis Thompson, who built and designed Chester Station. That's Badorgan. This is a classic. I remember when I was working in an office in Bangor and people said, "Come on, we're going to go on a pub crawl." At the station. What? So we got on a train at Bangor and came to Badorgan. They had a bar in Badorgan station. Behind it is the Badorgan Hotel, which served meals. Just down the road was the Sheep Inn, which only served drinks. Came back up, crossed the footbridge, on the other side of the station was another pub. You can have a pub crawl there in 5 different hostelries, and then you get the train back to Bangor. Next one, I've missed a load out, Rosniger and all the others. This is Ticrois. Ticrois near Rosniger is the only station that's got split platforms on the whole route. There's the platform for this side and there's the one for that side. The man operating the left crossing gates in the middle. That's the only one on the whole route where the platforms are split. I'm very happy. And then we come to Holyhead. And of course Holyhead has gone through so many changes through the years. There's got to be some of you remember trains coming along the northwest coast full of livestock from Ireland. They used to bring them over on the boats, load them at Holyhead into trains, cattle, sheep, pigs and everything. Because the railways used to carry lots of livestock. That doesn't happen now. And Valley Station, which is where the triangle of track is, just before there, where they used to load the nuclear flasks from Wilbur Power Station on to be taken to Sellafield. The triangle is now used to turn steam engines on it when the specials come from Chester or Crewe. And as we come into Holyhead, this is the clue of how busy it was. This is all gone now. It's the A55 comes from here. This is where all the loading bays were for the cattle and sheep and pigs coming from Ireland. This is where the engine shed was. It was a big one. The railway goes past the signal box into the station, but the station's a funny one. It's split either side of the harbour, the inner harbour. So I'll show you the platform. Once again, Francis Thompson design. Oh, that's not an old one. That's just a Sutherland, as it is now. Right, this is the old original station. 2 platforms with a bay platform. On the eastern side, notice how it curves. And then the other platform is through the station buildings over the other side, and that one curves the other way. And the original ferries were coming to the harbour between the 2 platforms. The ferries have become so big now, they can't enter that section of the harbour. So they come in at Salt Island further out. Look at the size of the station. That shows how many trains were coming from London, from Manchester, from Newcastle, all over the country, coming to Holyhead to board their passengers or freight on the ferries on the shortest distance across the Irish Sea. There's 4 large ferries operating from Holyhead now. I think 3 of them carry between 300 and 350 articulated lorries each. That's why if you travel on the A55 at night time, it's absolutely loaded with lorries. I'm looking down from the hill with the monument to do with the building of the port. So here's the oldest part of the station here. That previous picture was taken inside. And the other part is over there. And in between is that inner harbour. There's lots of famous pictures of ferries moored between the two sections. Good thinking. Trains coming in, trains going out. Nearly finished. And even that's old now. There's the HSS. But there's other ones now. I think the biggest one is still, what's it called, the Ulysses, which is like an ocean liner, so it's about 65,000 tonnes when that comes in. But there's 4 operating now. And of course ocean liners coming to Holyhead now as well. They do coach trips to Carnarvon Castle and to Llandudno and that sort of thing. So it's part of a northern ocean liner. Right, I put that there because I'm sure a lot of you can remember years ago that during the summer months, the North Wales coastline was jammed solid with excursion trains. They were coming to Llandudno, Colwyn Bay, whatever, and it presented a problem. My uncle from Bevington was a signalman on the Wirral line, and he used to become relief in the summer to give the signalman at Abergele a rest. He said it was the hardest job I've ever done. Very often we were working 15 hours through the night as well. There were so many trains coming, there was nowhere to store them between Llandudno, Junction and Bangor, so we had to send the empties back to Chester to store. So they kept finding parts for more, and it was like that. It was chock-a-block. He said, I went back to my box at Port Sunlight for a rest. Right, let's just finish on this bit, because it's a bit, it's like tarmac on the road you're driving, you never think about it. When the railways were first constructed, they mostly used oak for sleepers, and then they brought in cedar and other woods from Africa. The chair, this is the chair that the rail sits in, and then it has a key. In the early days it was a wooden block. The shape of the rail, and this is a flat bottom rail, but they have bulled head rails as well. The whole lot sits there, and it sits on a ballast base. So the ballast is a cushion as the train passes over it. That's an amazing history. We developed that. Other countries tried it, but it started in our country. The development of a railway track with the components I've just mentioned. And I take you back to Crewe. This is the reconstituted ballast centre, where daily between 10 and 12 trains with Class 66s bring in spent ballast that's been dug up. They bring it into here, it goes through a chemical process, cleans it, gets rid of all the bugs, it's then washed off thoroughly, and it then goes out on the train to reballast track all over the country. Crewe is the main place in the country where that takes place. I've talked too much, and don't do this. We always like to have a sunset. Please don't do this. I did it with my fluoro Ordnance Survey coat on, because I'd seen the train go and I thought, I bet I've got minutes. So I hopped in, it's near Bangor, and I've got a sunset in a railway tunnel. Thank you for your ears and eyes. I hope you've enjoyed that. Try travelling the route that speed on a train. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah? My hero.
Well, that was 75 minutes, packed full of facts, interesting facts, data, and a few steam engines. Michael, thank Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
That was fantastic. And I'm only sorry that Amy got in the way and kept a lot of our members away. Because as you know, when you've been here previously, you've had a full house.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, those that have come tonight, I'm sure will go away enthused and spread the word. And the next time you come, when the weather is more clement, we'll be back to a full house again. I think it is, something like that, yes.
Can I make a comment? If you do drive and you're up to it, where I showed you some of those dramatic bits, you can actually park near and look at it. If you go at the far end of Pembermouth Beach, where the flyover goes over the road to go into Pembermouth, if you turn down there, there's a little turning, it takes you on a big car park on the beach, there's steps down on the beach, check your Liverpool timetable, and you can walk along those viaducts I've shown you, and it's a stunning thing to see. But it's best to do it sort of end of May through June, just July, because the sun doesn't reach there after that, it's in shadow. That is so dramatic to see those viaducts.
Over 19,000 presentations Michael has given over the years.
Yeah.
He's got something in the order of 1 million images
Oh, yeah.
that he can bring out, and as I said earlier, he can put facts and figures to nearly every one of those images, which makes his presentations so interesting. We always enjoy your company.
106 subjects. 106 subjects on our list of it.
Oh, I don't know.
The river journeys,
Yeah.
all sorts of things.
I haven't counted them, but I do have the list. Yeah. I just pick out the ones I think we have here to. So again, many thanks, and for filling in at short notice as well.
Okay.
Really grateful. Thank you very much.
Start the raffle now.